Season 7, Episode 6, number 271 of the Decoded Podcast in English, but it was really cool to watch me talk in Chinese and to watch us talk in
Chinese or
Arabic.
Japanese?
It was Chinese,
Oh,
according
okay.
to the website, the AI site that I used called Dub Me or Dubbing, something dubbing. Um, the Chinese was really cool, but the Arabic. So I had to
I'm
listen.
sad. I'm sad. I have to say I'm sad that that you couldn't ascertain the quality of the Arabic. I felt like that was like, and I'm okay now. I'm okay now. But I felt like that was a little bit of the low hanging fruit. Like I really craved for you to say, "Yo, Clough," and it was like bang on. Like I was craving that. I needed you to sort of be able to account for that at some point. I get it. I get it.
So
Um,
I was just about to say that, but I haven't been able to roll back around to your question because I remember you saying to me somewhere in one
yeah.
of our modes of communication, does it make sense? Do you understand?
Mhm.
So at first I did not because I felt it as though it was very fast. It was very fast, and obviously it's a particular dialect, one that I'm not familiar with, and my ear has lost a lot of its power with
Yeah.
understanding. Nevertheless, after the 12th or 13th time I watched it and laughed, because just watching you start talking in Arabic was hilarious to me.
Yeah.
I started to get little bits. I started to get ana, which means me, and inta, which means you.
Mhm.
So you'd say you da 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 ana da 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 da. I'm like, oh, he just was talking about himself. And Sarah's like, how do you know that? I'm like, because I know ana inta, like those. They finally just landed, and they're like, you
Mm.
know this, Roland. Other than that, no, no. Um, but I was dying laughing every time I'd watch, and the kids are like, "Why do you laugh at that?" I'm like, "Because Chris is talking. Chris is speaking Arabic, and the Chris I know doesn't speak Arabic, but he's speaking Arabic here." So, um, and it would only do a minute, which is fine. And I mean, it's just cool. It's cool to know. It's cool to know that if you and I wanted to become, um, you know, sensational people in China or in countries where they speak Chinese, we just pay a little bit of money and we can have decoded podcast. We can do our decoded podcast in English, then push it out to our friends who speak Chinese and understand Chinese, and they can enjoy decoded podcast in Chinese. I think that's friggin' fantastic. That's what I think.
It's pretty awesome. As soon
Gary,
as that, yeah, as soon as that popped up, I was like, this is, see, and it was funny. I felt okay. So right away, here's where my brain kind of did this. I'm like, I started with this is really funny, and then my brain kind of said, no, that's not the right way to look at this. I started to actually, as you're pointing out, I started to look at the integrative cool usefulness of this. I wasn't operating in the right way. You were kind of just titillating me with this, like, oh, Roland's being cheeky. But then I started to kind of settle into him, like, no, wait a second. Like, this is the Star Trek moment. This is the universal translator where, as another tool, we're improving our connectedness and we're not getting hemmed up. We're not, well, you get hemmed up by the paywall, but we're not getting hemmed up in the social discomfort of not knowing what to do. It's like, we're just going to use this thing. I'm going to use the AI. The AI is going to listen. It's going to put together in a little bit more of real time what's going on. Because how long did it take for you? Like, so that was like freemium version. How long did it take for you to get a return on the actual item? Like when you posted it into the generator, how fast did it generate a minute's worth of translation?
oh, well, what happened was I gave it the link to our site.
Oh, and
So
it just
I purposely chose for one of them, I purposely chose a shorter version because I didn't know what it was going to do. I
right.
didn't know that no matter if I gave it a half-hour podcast or a 2-hour podcast, it was only going to give me 58 seconds of translation at the beginning. So
Right.
actually, it's smart. It took about, oh, this is interesting. It took a few minutes to get that 1 minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and that's the one. I mean, that's the one they're using the 1.0, part of the operating system. They're not giving it its full power. I mean, that's usually the way it works for the timing, is that it's kind of like for every 3 million jobs that are paid, it'll sort of like, okay, now do your pro bono work, AI system, and it'll let you punch out that one, just enough to give you the teaser.
Yeah.
But like I said, I started to think about it with a better part of my brain, and I was
Mhm.
like, damn, no, this is a shift. This is a shift worth paying attention to, because it's really cool, and the possibilities of doing that in real time have deep impacts on how we do school. It really does. Think about having access to that when we were doing video teaching in COVID times.
Mhm.
And family, we knew we were teaching to families. We weren't even teaching to kids anymore. Parents and families were sitting there, well, okay, so here's the loop. There's a high likelihood that someone that worked on this had a moment, some aha moment, some spark moment, that they thought, man, imagine if these videos that the teachers are putting out, imagine these videos, links that are being done with Zoom. Imagine if we had an instantaneous translator that could do it. Like, okay, let's work on the voice to text. So they got that up real quick, and they could kind of get these voice to text. We already have closed captioning. Well, what if we connect with the closed captioning, the Google Translate? Okay, cool. What if we do the voice generation stuff and lay that over the closed captioning? So now someone's sitting there and they can hear this is how we are talking. But so it's more, robot voice. And then you get these other ones where, like, it not only was in Arabic, but the tones of our voices matched, not perfect, but it still sounded a little bit like you just talking in Arabic, and the tones sound a little bit like me talking in Arabic. So that's extra, man. Like, that's the real cool thing. These large language models and the power of the processing. That's the bump. That's the new bump. Um, I want to end with this, and this is, I think, what made my brain realize that this is something really, really new. I remember when I was 3 or 4 years ago, when I was in the community classroom, and students would use their assistive devices to talk to us. So they had a PEC screen, and they could actually tap a button, you know, is it time for a break? I need bathroom. And if you're teaching in the classroom and some of the students' conversations going on, I had this sudden realization of how important my hearing and the tool of hearing, which is, I'll say, echolocating. So being able to sort of understand where I am in the room, who's in the room, and what they're doing in the room. And so I'll put this as an example. You have you're facing the touch screen for a second, or the smart board, and you're doing a thing, and you hear from behind you, Clough, I need to go to the bathroom. So this is a voice that's coming from someone's mouth, a voice from the mouth, okay, not from an actual device. So as you're actually writing on the board, that's like, there's so much data that comes with that. It's coming over your right shoulder. You look down, you kind of that's that prio proprioception. Do you know about this? I think I'm saying it right. Proprioception is the fluency of understanding where your body is in space. Right now in my classroom, the community classroom, we're working a lot on this for students that have some the way that their brain kind of works, it doesn't always communicate well to left hand and right hand at the same time, or their gait is kind of off because of the tactility of what it feels like to walk. Like, there's a lot of different data that comes in, kinesthetic data, that doesn't always translate to clear locomotion and clear small and large muscle movement. So that proprioception is this idea that the data that's coming in translates to a reasonable response in the body. So where it's useful for a neurotypical, or a fairly neurotypical like me, proprioception activates almost instantly. I'm facing the board. I hear a Cluff, can I go to the bathroom? I can categorize, I can identify and categorize. So first I can identify who it is talking to me because I recognize the voice. I can categorize the tone of it. Is there some anxiousness to it? I can also position it and say to myself, oh, they're standing right over my right shoulder. They've gotten up from their seat. And all of that information kind of puts me, oh, this kid really has to go to the bathroom. Or it turns to, you're going to turn and look, and you know that they're going to be standing very close to you. It's a powerful bit of information, right? It's a very powerful bit of information. And there's some individuals that don't have this as a natural fluency. They have to work at it. And there's other ones that are hyper develop this. And you watch them move through the world, they're like a squirrel. Like they just seem to be so adept at movement. And some athletes do this you watch them on the basketball court and you realize they have such a high quality pure perception that it seems like no one can touch them. You watch Mike Tyson in a boxing match, high pure perception, like just the idea of taking in data and responding to. I was watching him yesterday and he was talking about breaking a defense. And it was like a 3-step. It was a duck, and then it was like a jab, and then an uppercut. And he was doing it in response to someone just doing like he did 15 moves in the time that this one guy just kind of threw 2 slow punches. And I think this is fairly recent. Like, I don't know, Tyson's what, in his 60s, early 70s now? Something like that. Got to Google that shit. But he's got like the gray beard and he's still like, and then he's in and his fist is up. You're like, that would normally land on the chin and the guy would be down. High pure perception. So I'm going to back this up. So I'm standing at the board writing something at the smart board and I hear, is it snack time? But it's a voice coming from a device. And I think to myself, at the time, I'm like, I don't know who said that. So I turn and I can see the student looking at me. I'm like, okay, I turned and the student is looking at me. It must be that student that was asking. So I kind of respond. I say, yeah, it's 10 minutes to snack. And then I come across, I think it was maybe 2 months later, I come across a piece of, it might have been a TED Talk. It was maybe a podcast. And it was a woman who was taking, I got to find it now. I feel like I so want to go back into this. She was taking voice donations. And what she would do is she would sit with, I think it was something high, like somewhere between 6 to 10 hours would be your donation. And you would sit, you could do it, I could do it. You would sit and you would read all these texts, different types of texts in different types of tones, in different types of styles. And she would take that and it turned it, you got to almost like imagine a little bit like a vocal soup, but it has all the data points of all your tones, all your clicks, all your syntax, all your emotionality, and it would just be like this kind of soup. And then what she would do is she would sit with the family of an individual who doesn't use their mouth for a voice, but still has vocalization. So they have an understanding of the kind of the sound that this person is capable of making through their mouth. And then they take the device, they load up your vocal soup, and they have all the sort of like the frequency kind of things on this. So they know what kind of tone and timbre and sound that your particular soup can make. And then it becomes like Plinko. They dump the soup into it, and then the parent listens to it, and the individual listens to it. It goes, dunk, 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 and the voice falls into this pattern that they then load onto the device. So instead of the device, can I go to the bathroom? Which is that you get like, remember, you could do the device. Would you like the Spanish sounding woman? Would you like the British sounding one? Like there's like this, or the computer voice, but you never got do you want Jimmy's voice? So now Jimmy gets a voice, and the parent sitting there who has listened to their vocalizations for years and can right away know if the parent was like walking out of the room and they heard Jimmy make a sound from his voice, which may not be a formed word, but it has the tone and timbre of, I need to go to the bathroom. The parent turns around like, yeah, Jimmy, come on, I'll help you go to the bathroom. Jimmy goes to the bathroom. Now Jimmy hits his device and it's Jimmy's friggin' voice. And the parent's crying because now the parent is actually hearing their child's voice in one way. Now the parent was always hearing the child's voice, always hearing the child's voice. But there is an element of this of our ability to communicate is not just with those that are intimate to us. It's our ability to connect with the world. So I thought, like, man, this as I that was the gap I fell into as I'm actually listening to you and I speak Arabic, which is on one hand completely outlandish, and we're trying to do the fist bump, and I'm pointing at myself, and I don't even remember what we were talking about. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a big move. This totally speaks to this moment that I had 7 or 8 years ago, thinking that's not that human's voice. Yes, at the same time, it is that human's voice because they've been using it for so long. I'm like, but it's not dynamic. And you know what I mean? Like it was just a wonderful epiphany and also just like a wow moment, like holy crap, this is cool. That was long. But dude, you lit me up with that. Like that's the backstory to me hearing us speak Arabic and then Chinese.
So I'm gonna rewind to the start of your talk. Your I don't even want to call it a TED talk anymore because
Talk.
you just your
How about this, my Jimmy Jabber?
Jimmy Jabber. Okay, first let's say Gary's joined us. Good morning, Gary.
Gary, it's good to have you here, bro.
Gary said good morning 15 minutes ago.
You know what? I think you started to say, Gary, I was on. Sorry, Gary. I'm
No,
not. I'm sorry. Sorry, but it's our podcast. But hey, I had to get that out. It was happy. It made me happy to say those words. Good morning, Gary.
I'm happy that you're happy that you got to say those words and that it lands well for you. If I rewind, two things I want to say. Number one,
Mhm.
I was reminded recently about um, when the world was when the world was thinking about trying to hit the pause button on the progress of AI in our society. Do you remember that when Elon and
That was
Wozniak?
a business move. That
I
was
know,
purely, yeah, because
bro.
we know dude was in the background developing his own stuff.
Dude
Yeah.
was in the background crying, being like, "I need OpenAI to slow down so I can catch up." I get it. I
Yep.
get it.
Yep.
The list of 150 names, and two of them happen to be major players in the zone. So they're like, "No, we need to stop. It's out of control. It's out of control. It's out of control." I was reminded of that, and then I burst out laughing because if they thought that was out of control, what do they think today? Because that machine has not stopped. That machine in my lifetime as I reflect back on my life, and I don't know a lot, but if it hits me as a consumer at my level and I pay attention, I have not seen anything hit me like what how it's hitting me. And because I've talked to you about this, I spend a lot of time reading about it. I go searching for, I want to read more. What's happening with this? What's happening with that? Bro, it's not stopped. It's not slowed down. If anything, it is continuing to be built into everything we do and everything we touch. Which brings me to my next point. My buddy Joe Marquez, Joe said months ago in one of his first presentations around generative AI that it is going to become as ubiquitous as a spell check is in our on our word processing devices and stuff, word processing software. He said that months ago, and it is we've arrived. Like if you're using the Edge web browser, you have access to the Bing chatbot, the AI chatbot that is running on ChatGPT 4.0, which is the newest and more advanced ChatGPT. It's all there. Like it's there. You hit a button. It's been there for months. It was there in the spring because I was talking to a dad at hockey, and he said he opened up his browser and he was doing something and he needed to ask a question. He's like, "Hey, that's Chat GPT and it's right there, and everybody's talking about it, so I might as well use it." It's all there, and it's getting it. I'm excited because the things you and I, the Star Trek things you and I have talked about here on this podcast, are actually happening. Some some pardon my language, some geeks from Stanford are sitting in their basement right now laughing at us because they're like, "Oh, Empathy Engine's glasses? Oh yeah, we thought of that about a year ago. We're just waiting for all these other companies to catch up with the software and this developer's, playing too many games at night when he should be building that software and the code." Like, it's all there. And the things I'm reading, I'm blown away every morning. I typically read that stuff in the morning. I'm blown away. I'm like, this is happening, and this company's buying this, and that company's buying that, and then they're doing this with that, and it's like Star Trek is here, man. The Hollow, the computer, the Iron Man computer, Jarvis, it's friggin' here. Jimmy Jarvis, Jarvis Jimmy, whatever you wanna, it's here. It's all here now, and it's only getting stronger and better with each day. It's pause button, the only thing that was gonna pause that was if we destroyed our Earth. If we just nucleared that's coming, I guess, because we got the war in Ukraine, we got the war Israel now. It's like, if we can survive those things, we're good. But if we don't survive, that's the only pause button for AI. There is no pause. Nobody's stopping. Everybody's getting into the game. I'm sure Elon now sitting back counting the dollar bills that are coming in for him. Pause button. And I think if somebody digs into that podcast, they'll hear me say there's not going to be a pause. Nobody's going to pause. You can talk about a pause all you want. I don't care how much influence you have, unless, and even if the courts were to say in certain jurisdictions you will pause, it's not going to happen. They're going to keep doing it because it equals money, which makes me sad at the end of the day. It makes me sad because, well, I'm not getting any of that money, so that's why I don't really care about the money. But I want to see Star Trek come to life. I want to have my own Jarvis. I know I could have one of those. I don't. What are they called? The Amazon Echo or whatever. The thing you talk to on your
Mhm.
coffee table. I don't know. They had them in classrooms years ago. My colleagues would have, "Hey Google, can you do? What's the temperature like outside or whatever?" And the kids loved it. We have it. It's just I want I just want it to be with me at all times. If that means I have to wear Empathy Engine glasses and just talk to the glasses and have it talk back, man, I want it. I want it all. We just need to get through the friggin' the wars.
It's
Gary,
true.
Gary likes listening to you, Chris. I don't
You
blame
know
him.
what I've done? Here's the thing.
Who's
Here's
this
what I've
dude? Chris Clough. Good
There
morning.
we
Happy to
go.
have you here.
And Gary, sorry, I dropped the double R. Yeah, so
Oh,
I'm over. I decided to sort of like actually participate in the chat. So I put it up now. So it's good to put it up, but I thought I want to drop some stuff on there. So what I actually did is I put into the chat, put up that can you just see the one that I put good morning, folks? The next one.
oh, it's not here. I
Oh
don't have it
no?
here. Nope. Maybe there's a slowness. I don't know. You said good morning to everybody. It's not here.
I put good morning, folks, and I actually put the link in for the chat. Sorry, for the TED Talk.
It.
That I'm gonna just because I'm messing with this. Let's see what it does.
I wish I could. I wish if it was here, I'd be happy to oblige. But it on my screen, I do not see that.
Interesting. So I put it in twice. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't like me putting a link in the chat.
Maybe try something else. Just try, "Hey folks," and let's see if it is the link that's stopping it. Um,
Um,
it would be cool. I don't know.
let's see if this lagged. Okay, so there we go. I just sent in another one.
Okay. Oh, Yeah, there it is. Chris needs a second coffee today.
All right, so I'm gonna put in the just the name of the TED Talk then, because I think it's worthwhile. And this is from this is here's the cool thing. This is from 8 years ago, bro. And this is where I think um let me just put this on here as everyone just listens to us. It's
I
like
know.
watching.
It,
Yeah, this is like looking over at the table and the whole family's on their devices. People are listening to our podcast right now, and you and I are just like, yeah, we'll be with you in a second. Just let me finish writing this up.
yeah. Oh, we're doing a podcast?
Yeah, I know.
That's where we're at, right? That's where we're at. But while you do that, I am, as I talk about the wars,
There, did that pop up?
yeah, a really great TED Talk, raising the volume of voice donations.
And this is scientist that that took. I put the link in there. I don't know. We'll see. But maybe it doesn't stream the link to you
Mm.
to the actual StreamYard,
Well,
but I can see it's in the chat. Like I've put up the last like 5 messages in there.
so
Uh,
Gary, can
yeah.
you, if you have a second, can you tell us if you see all those things Chris posted?
And tell
I
me if the links are hot. That's
Okay.
the other thing I'm curious. Yeah.
I certainly don't. Anything that you put in with a link does not appear in my comments, and it says I'm supposed to be able to see all live viewer comments.
There we
So,
go. So Gary just put in there no link.
oh, thank you, Gary.
That's
Interesting.
so now we got something to look into because so here's what I'm thinking, right? How many times we've had conversations where we've made references to stuff
Yes.
and I just figured being able to put it into the discussion here. I wonder if that's a setting, maybe something that you have to change in the decoded like the actual security settings.
Maybe, or maybe it has something to do with the fact that we don't pay. Like, I don't know. I'm just putting it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna check that out. Okay. Where did we start to go there for a second? But before
Um,
we went
I
on
was
to our devices?
I was going to talk about the war,
Do
but
it.
not necessarily the war. But
Yep.
okay, so Van Neistat, Casey Neistat's brother, he has a YouTube channel. I can't post the link. I wish I could, but he's very interesting in the things that he creates and shares. But one of the things that he created and shared was about a book. Um, Shoot, I wish I knew the name of the book. Let me see. Um, okay, the book. He created a visual representation of our 80-year history cycles as laid out in the 1997 book, The Fourth Turning. So the book is called The Fourth Turning. And basically, what the author has done is the author has researched and collected world events over time, and he believes he's discovered an 80-year history cycle that we keep rolling through them. He calls them turnings. And in 1997, he wrote about the fourth turning. So I think there are four turnings in the 20 years each cycle, or 20-year components of an 80-year cycle, something like this. I'm butchering it, but the bottom line is, as Van created his video, he's like, okay, we are in the whatever stage right now, and so we are according to history. Because it's funny, because he goes back, he's like, I didn't believe this. But then he starts going back, and he's in those chunks of time. You can identify the things that this author says happens in those cycles. There's like abundance of something, then there's war. They don't call it war, but they call it like the down the downtime. And so then he goes back in history and he shows us during this 80-year cycle, this was the downtime and it was this. So he was talking about whatever we're in the middle of, it ends around 2028 before we move into the next thing. And I remember watching and thinking, yeah, whatever. And even thinking, yeah, whatever of the history presented to me. But then just like, I know things have been hot in the Middle East since I was a kid. Like it's always been since my parents were kids. It's always been the hotspot or a hotspot. And now, like with what has happened recently, I feel like it's boiled over. Like I hope it stops. I really do. But I feel like this time around, something with that feels different to me because it's always been bubbling. Israel, Palestine, and I've been corrected. People are like, stop saying Palestine. It's not the Palestinian people that are doing this. It's Hamas. And I'm like, you're right. You're right. It, it's just that area has always been versus each other, right? And innocent people are dying, which is friggin' nobody should die, but there are people dying that are not part of this game, this situation, which friggin' sucks. And people are trapped in that space too. So I'm reminded of Van's video about the fourth turning and you know the whole Russia and Ukraine thing doesn't seem to be going away. And now Israel and Hamas, that's not going away. There's going to be more bloodshed and countries are scared to enter in. I mean, I didn't want to talk politics here. I just feel like you got the AI that is like busting at the seams and progress, progress, progress. And then you have war and you have people dying, you have bombs exploding and people shooting. It's like, for me, this conflict of advancement in one way and then brutal devastation in the other. I just felt like saying something about that.
I
If
appreciate that. Yeah, I'm just now. So here's what I'm doing on our chat because I actually took out my journal that I use. I thought I every once in a while tracked what we talked about, but I think what I might just do, I'll do this now. So as I'm chatting, I'm just going to put it in caps what we're kind of talking about at different moments. Whatever, you can put up as a comment if you want, but yeah,
Oh,
I sort of look. Go ahead.
I said I like it.
Yeah, who knows? I'm just test driving it, right? Test driving it. I don't know if I'll remember to do it for every single one. I actually did. I was on my run this morning. I wondered if we would. I wondered if we would sort of get anywhere near talking about what's happening between Palestine and Israel. I have no grounding. I have no grounding in it. I don't have a clear understanding, and I haven't invested the time to understand it. So there's different pieces to it for me that I've read in different spaces, listened to some podcasts. Um, I understand some of the historical context that has set up this generational conflict. I am so under informed, and my skill in navigating the conversation, I don't know. I wouldn't even know. I have no clue. That's what I realized as I was running. I was like, I don't even know what to say. And um in my brain, this isn't to avoid the conversation. It's to declare that if I when I do when I do step into the conversation, then it'll be because I've done the work to understand. It's like I hear the words about this and I see the stuff on the news, and it seems so alien to my brain. Like it just can't contextualize it. And our brains as pattern makers and pattern collectors. I haven't been able to latch onto a pattern that lets my brain sink into an understanding of what's going on. It's remarkable to me that there are geopolitical and world scale political issues that, despite me drilling down into my reflective practice, sometimes the net effect of that is that great, I've got a deeper understanding of myself and the close circles around me, but it also insulates me against some of these bigger world things. And I'm not much of a news watcher. I'm not. I don't sit and watch world news. Um, And I don't follow events where I think to myself, I need to track this to get more. My interests tend to fall away. So thanks for bringing this into back in front of me. It's a good reminder. Um, all I can say is I'll keep watching and reading and understanding, I guess.
Uh, I so I'm gonna make a connection. Gary says is sobering to think about, and so I'm kind of on the same page as you, Chris. Like I guess having a, a background in my parents coming from the Middle East and growing up in that culture, I've never really understood it. And this is where I want to make the connection. And I want to make a couple of connections. Number one, Gary, I appreciate your comment. And Gary, I want to a shout out to Gary. Now, Gary, you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong because I know there's lots of misinformation in the world. But I want to say the work that you've done in the high schools with the Model UN, my understanding is that you brought the the idea, you made it happen in our school board. I think is fantastic. That's my understanding, Gary. If I'm wrong, I know you're a humble guy. I'm not trying to feed your ego, but you my understanding is from talking to certain people and just knowing you that you've done a lot of work in that space, and that because of stuff like that, because you've brought Model UN to our district and that you are like leading in that space, I think kids are learning about these international situations, or at least getting a flavor for what's happening in the world because of the Model UN. That's just I don't know the curriculum. I don't know how you run it, but so I just wanted to give you two thumbs up for that based on my understanding. So thank you for that. Because I believe at times like this, with the whole what's happening with Ukraine and now what's happening in the Middle East, and I'm sure the Model UN's always talking about the hot spots in the world and how do we navigate these spaces and these issues in diplomatic ways so that we can avoid as much bloodshed as we can. I think that's fantastic. That's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to say is back in grade 12 or 13, I remember there was a field trip to Carleton University and it was really cool. It was one of these, hey, if you're at school on this day, you're getting on that school bus and you're going to Carleton University for the day, and you get to pick 4 workshops to participate in. So it was like one of those come to the university and check out, meet some of our professors, walk around the campus and check out the buildings, sit in a lecture hall on a topic that you've chosen to learn a little bit more about. I loved it. I was geeking out because I was like, this is where I want to go to school. I want to go to university. One of it's strange that we're talking about this because one of the workshops I chose of the 4 was around like international relations, international education. And I don't even know why. And then the other one that I remember more was about conflict. It was called something like conflict in the Middle East. And I'll never forget, none of my other friends signed up for that one. Right. So you got Arab, Lebanese, Roland like signing up for that one, and then you got these other guys signing up for computer science or whatever. And I remember because I was like, guys, what are we signing up for? Because I wanted to be with my friends, but clearly I thought to myself, this is when I knew this is when I knew that I might become something with my life. I was like, I'm making a decision for myself here. They want to go dick around in the sociology thing. I'm not doing that because I want the biggest bang for my buck today at Carleton University because that was a big deal to me. I went to something called Conflict in the Middle East. Bro, I walked into this classroom that could seat 100 people. It wasn't an auditorium, it was a classroom. There were like desks and chairs and a front and a back. I walked in, and I'm not shitting you. 99% of the people, the students in that room, looked Arab. They were not white. They were they looked more like me. And then I sat down and the professor walked in, and the professor was not white, typically speaking. And this guy just started to do what professors do. He just laid into the content and he just talked. And as he was talking, people would raise their hands and they would ask questions and make points. And then I found myself sitting there thinking, oh my God, they're talking about where my parents came from. And I don't have a friggin' clue what they're talking about. I have no schema about any of this. And I'm looking at these kids who are like, you know, 17, 18 years old who seem to have a fluency around this topic. And I am out of my league. Now, it was a good thing because I was like, I had nothing to lose. So it didn't matter. Like, it's not like I had to write an essay about it and I was going to get a credit or not get a credit. I was just there, high school kid, learning that maybe this is something I might want to study at Carleton University. And it blew my mind. Bro, that was in like, holy 1993 or 1994 or 1995. And look at where we are today. Um, and I still don't know as much as I should know. Or I know more about generative AI and what's happening in the AI world than I know what's happening in the Middle East. I'm not going to talk about them here because I think I could say a lot of things that if somebody ever dug into this podcast could do something with. I have an opinion on what's happening out there, and I don't think it's a popular opinion. But what I will say is that I am against people dying. Like I've read on Twitter that there are people who are like, tough luck to Israel. You deserve something like this. I'm like, whoa. You're telling me that you believe that people deserve to die? I'm not there. I'm not there. The world needs to pay attention. I know it's a complicated situation, but I know, in my opinion, that the nations of power around the world are not doing as much as they can, from my perspective, to help, just like in Ukraine. And I know there's political reasons why, but we're letting people die. We're letting people attack other people. And I have a hard time with that. I don't understand why we can't put an end to that. Anyway, thanks for listening. 1993 to 95, I was at Carleton University talking about conflict in the Middle East. And there were people there my age who could talk to the professor for days. There were people disagreeing with him and like making really good points. It was friggin' fantastic.
Dude, you're way beyond me. I was one of the kids that's like go into these you know, I didn't survey or audit any courses, but my few visits that I did participate in, yeah, I was the guy like, where's the cafeteria? I was that guy. Yeah, I was that guy. I was also the guy that was like just wanting to cruise on this idea that I had somehow arrived in a place and that was enough. Like, look at me. I'm at university. So I liked in the background. Yeah, see Gary was posting up about the voices that were kind of the voices. Gary's statement was, it started out with a few students craving to be curious, to have a voice and explore their world. Mm-hmm. And I was curious. Yeah, I kind of, put it to Gary, like, what were some of the voices that emerged in this? Always, Gary, I'm always I'm craving to kind of make it less abstract, right? Also, in me asking that question, I created to get to know you a little bit, Gary. And so, the kind of voices that emerged are also based on our schema of being able to hear those voices. Like our whenever I do an activity in class, it's my assessment of success in a space is a very small, I don't know, I'll say for me, it's not the whole percentage as far as whether or not that activity was actually successful. So even in saying, their curiosity was sparked and these voices emerged, what we see as teachers is still our perspective on that. And assessing that that's happening in our classroom sometimes also extinguishes the elements that are happening. So yeah, I love to hear stuff about there. Yeah, so what Gary's saying, that Model UN club signed up more than 60 students in a small high school. Cool. That's cool. A strong 60. Strong 60. Maybe so, Gary, if you're still connected to it, bring back some stories, whatever is sort of safe to share, because I love to hear about autonomy. I love to hear about agency. I love to hear about legacy, as in of that 60, how many were a part of it last year, and how do you see them supporting and coaching and mentoring others? I don't know the kind of activities that you have there, right? Um, but have some of the people that have been there for a while, do you see them stepping into the moderator role? Are they stepping into the the advocate, the activist, or are they just there for social reasons? It's a cool club to be a part of. Maybe 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 Gary is like Mr. Davis. He's just a cool person. That's Chids. Me and Chids talking about someone that
Mr. Daly, my Mr.
Daly.
Daly, your
Sorry,
Mr.
yeah,
Davis. I
yeah,
love
yeah.
how Tom Hooton, Tim Horton.
There we go. Yeah, bringing the donuts, right? So is it that it's a cool place to hang around with Mr. K? Yeah, lots of reasons kids join any sort of affinity group or club. So I'd love to hear more stories at
Oh,
some point.
you know, you you let me. I hope Gary shares as well. I'll tell you
Mhm.
what I know about the Model UN. I believe, and Gary will obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've seen, each of the high schools in our district are invited to have representatives. And then what Gary has done is bring them all to the board office in Kitchener, and they set up the room like it's the UN, and every kid belongs to a country, and they do what happens at the United Nations meetings. So people are representing different places and their interests, and then people are learning. It's really cool. It's kids are learning how this works at the international level. I think it's fantastic on a number of different levels. One of them is that kids get to belong to something that they may have not been interested in and now are part of it, or crave something like that, and there it is, it exists. I know for my son, he's participated. Last year he was part of a group that on certain days of the week at lunch, you go to this teacher's classroom and they did like a trivia thing. It was like the trivia club or something. And how did my son fall into it is that his teacher, the teacher that was running it was teaching him one of his courses, and I think sold it to the class, or was like, "Hey, if you're not doing anything on this day at lunch, just stay in the room." And the teacher was cool. He was like, "I know it's cold outside. Like, you guys want a quiet place or a warm place to chill? You can do that here and participate in the trivia thing." So my son would tell me that him and his friends would stay in and they'd eat their lunch in the room, or my son would work on his homework as trivia was happening. And every now and again, he'd raise his hand and try to answer the question. It didn't really hit me until the yearbook came home in September. And I was looking through, I'm like, "Hey, where are you at in here?" And it was like, "Oh, you're here and here." He's like, "Yeah. And remember Trivia Club?" I'm like, "This is friggin' fantastic." So there's like I don't know, a dozen kids who went to this thing often enough to warrant themselves saying, "Yeah, I'll be in the yearbook picture for this club." I'm like, "This is friggin' awesome." It's a great reminder of the cool things about high school that help people get to high school and stay in high school. You know, and I know that we're in a bit of a labor situation with the government, and I've talked to my kids already. I've said to both of them, if there's something happening in school right now that you're interested in, try out for it or go to it, because in the winter this might not happen. So they're like, "Why, Dad?" And I'm like, "Because the government's messing with us again." Like I just tell them I'm not happy with what they're going to do to us. So that means you guys are going to lose for a bit, so that kids down the road will get the things that you want so badly right now. Because I guarantee you, if teachers are treated poorly, I know I'm pushing back. I'm not going to give my life to the job if the job's not going to give anything to me. So that's just me though. Um, Chris, you said good morning to Rochelle. I didn't know she was here. Good morning, Rochelle.
Got into the room. Got into the room. So
Did
I
she
like I
say
said,
anything in
dude.
the comments? I don't
Model
see
UN
it.
is one of my good high school memories. Loved
Oh,
it. Loved it.
sorry, Rochelle. Welcome, Rochelle. Rochelle, they were doing Model UN when you were in high school?
Easy, 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 easy.
Rochelle's like 20. So it's, no. Anyway, I'm going to move on to, um, I love that you're doing this, Chris. I love that you're doing this.
I'm screaming, all caps. It's all caps. But at least I don't know. Let's see. Let's see. Right?
5
Gary's
conferences a year?
Gary's dropping in saying minimum of 5 conferences a year. We even participate in conferences with students from other countries like Colombia. That's cool. I would say that's definitely a space that I have not figured out a consistent way to look at learning as a global adventure from my classroom. So that's Gary. That's what you just gave me a good reminder. Something for me to work on. I'll add it to the list. But this idea of creating connectivity and community beyond my classroom in a consistent way. That's a lot of C's, a lot of alliteration there. But other people have done it so well. I mean, it turned into like a badge of achievement, I think, during COVID times where classrooms were able to work together on stuff because everyone was sort of existing digitally. And some of those collaborative things were really, really cool. I know Pete Cameron has done a ton of that type of work, I think, through National Geographic stuff. Alison Fuiz as well, another person, has done a ton of that stuff through not just National Geographic. There's another one. It's not United Nations, but there's another biggie that sort of does this. The topics start at a global level, so it's easy to start kind of bring your kids into it, right? Topics like water and pollution and climate change. So I like Gary dropped another thing in there too.
Yes.
Yeah, that whole club also grew into a course called in international diplomacy. That's really wicked because I know there's IDT courses that our school board, I think all school boards have access to, where you can actually create like an independent course. And what you're able to do, like we had a back in the day, one of the cool ones was history versus Hollywood. And so it's a history credit, but you get to sort of put together expectations from different courses. So I think there was some media expectations in there. There was history expectations, and the kids looked at how is history portrayed over the years through film. Kind of cool.
That is very cool. I think, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you not have a hand in writing the curriculum for the international diplomacy course? Um, I also remember 2 years ago when I was doing re-engagement in the high schools and I was at Gary's high school. I remember um, meeting with a guidance counselor who was speaking very highly of that course, trying to encourage one of our students that I was working with to jump into that one, but didn't work out. During COVID, we continued to offer online UN simulations because students craved it continuing. I think that's fantastic. I love, Chris, how you dropped Canadian educators. Allison's from with the Ottawa board,
I
I
believe
think,
so. Yeah.
and Pete, and I think she's Catholic too, Catholic board, and I know Pete's Catholic up in Lakehead, Thunder
Is
Bay.
it
Sorry, Thunder
Thunder
Bay.
Bay? Yeah.
Um, Donnie Piercy, who's an American on the East Coast. Um, I know Donnie because he's in the Google bubble. He's also done a lot of that stuff. It's fantastic that there is so much going on in that space. Which reminds me, um, before COVID, I was very interested in a program. Yes, okay, so Gary did. You wrote the course. Gary wrote the course. I love that. We got Rochelle. We got Rochelle, who's like doing all kinds of wicked stuff with faith and religion based stuff in my district. And we got Gary, who's doing the international political stuff. I love it. We got creators here, we got leaders here. Um, before COVID, I was teaching grade 2 and 3, and there was a program, I don't remember the name of the program. There was a program that late primary and junior teachers could apply to that had to do with the social studies curriculum. I don't remember. I just remember it caught my eye, and I thought I'm going to do that. And it was one of those, you apply to create a unit connected to certain aspects of social studies curriculum, and then you submit it to, I don't know who it was, but if you were chosen, you'd get to go to Ottawa for 2 days, and you'd get to go to Parliament Hill and spend time um, on the Hill, connecting with different politicians and stuff about the unit you created and its connection to politics. And I was drooling because I was like, I'd stay at my mom's house. It would be, I'd get to go home and visit my family. During the day, I'd be at Parliament Hill in Parliament. And then at night, I'd be with my family. Like it would be the perfect combination. Um, and then COVID hit. And I was like, oh, and everything stopped. And now I don't teach grade 3. So it's not for me, but you know, I crave stuff like that. And I think everybody in this room right now is of that. We all have that in us. I really like that. So, okay, Gary was part of the writing team. Awesome. That's awesome. Um, and then we got Chris is like off the hook today at Gary. Good stuff, dude. And then, you know, Rochelle, speak up. Chris is curious what parts of the Model UN lit you up. Rochelle's very, in my opinion, Rochelle is a great diplomat in the way she approaches people and talks about things, to a point where I remember having some conversations with Rochelle when I worked in the same building as her. And I would just be dropping bombs, like very polarized opinions and words. And Rochelle would respond she would acknowledge my bombs, but would respond in a very rational and calm fashion that would kind of land right on the fence. So when I think of Rochelle, that's what comes to mind.
Can I throw a little curveball into here that it just kind of occurred to me. What do you got, Blue Jays? Well done.
You're talking about curveballs, and I'm drinking from a
curveball.
Blue Jays
Oh,
cup.
there we go. Sorry, I missed the connection. So Rochelle and Gary have come out and had, come out to play quite a few times. I would say enough so that I want to. Sorry, can I? This is a bit of a pivot. Can I do a little pivot? Slight pivot. You and I in the past have talked a lot about micro credentialing and this idea that our school boards don't have a clear way to, I would say, acknowledge. Here's what's kind of cool. The school boards don't have a clear way to accredit or acknowledge the personal professional development that we do away from the school. The system in itself it takes our learning as the common tongue. So you read a book on multi-language learners. Well, the board's not going to sort of directly say you have to read that book, but the board and the students benefit, you benefit, your colleagues benefit, yada, 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 all the way down the path. But systems in itself tend to like to do the handshake with other systematized versions of stuff, like systems. Sometimes they don't, but for the most part they do. So you go take an AQ, the system goes. You go take your master's, system goes. You go get your doctorate. That's my sound effect for the thumb. Because is there a sound effect for the thumb? The like? Does it work? Ping. That would work too, I guess. So I'm going to throw a challenge out to Gary and Rochelle, maybe. It's a discussion. Here's a starting point. Maybe it's a thought experiment. that you consider your participation in this podcast as part of your professional development. And that if someone even asks, they're talking about podcasts, that you step up and say, I've been on a podcast. Just so someone says, you've been on a podcast? I've been on a podcast. You actually go and say, like, if we go back and look at the data, I think Gary's been on like 20 podcasts with us. I think Rochelle, at least that as well. I think Rochelle, you came and played with us last season too, right? I think, yeah. So I'm just putting that out there as a think about. What do you think about? But even to that extension of, like, I think on my professional resume, I'm now officially gonna put in Decoded Podcast co-host. I'm gonna put that. And now we're at 271 at least hours minimum. I would say that number is probably closer to 400 in the total number of conversations that you and I have had just here. So it's 400 hours of discussion that is timely, on point, and current, and synergistic with a bunch of different access points. So, being a dad, being a teacher, being a husband. What got me thinking about this was a story just recently. I think CBC put it up, and they were talking with a woman who put her, I don't know LinkedIn, but I guess she added to her, whatever the profile is there, active profile on LinkedIn, she included she's now on parental leave with her new baby. And she's including in LinkedIn, whatever I'll assume there's some sort of a resume or critical skill or something that is like always your hot sheet of qualifications. She has included what she is doing as a new mom. And I guess there's a community element to it, and she's getting feedback, and it's opening up new discussion around the skill sets that she's developing and how these will ultimately be transferable, and micro-credentialing towards her job. I forget what her job is. And I guess this is semi-groundbreaking for some of the people in her community, definitely groundbreaking from a LinkedIn perspective. But it got me thinking about as well that if the system is not going to formally recognize, then I'm just going to start including it in there. So it creates a little bit of a wall. Like, what do you mean your podcast is part of your professional learning? So I can see in the comments here, Rochelle, yes, I do. I have mentioned the podcast to my colleagues when RC presented in my leadership workshop. Yeah, so I think that there is something to sort of start to think about the participation in these discussions. I love, like I said, Rochelle, you jumped in last season. Gary, you jumped in with us this season. I want to throw kudos out to you that you participate here, and you seem to be kind of down with some of the conversations we have. But I also want to just say, in the grander sense, good for you for considering this. I don't even know what the hell it is that brings you back. I mean, we'll send out a Google form suggestion box kind of a thing. But I just like seeing individuals that are pursuing personal professional development in their own time willingly, right? And I'll put it out there as just like a bit of thought fuel, including things like this on your resume, including it in everyday discussion, including it in the staff meeting. On the weekend, I was a part of a podcast. I actually don't even give a shit if you name me or name the podcast, but using that as a fluency into conversations so that the system recognizes that. And again, the system will recognize the more that we put these roadblocks in its way. I was in a podcast on the weekend and we were talking about X. And you know what? This is what it got me thinking of. You're sitting in your TPA. I've been on a podcast several times and we were talking about assessment. Doom. And this is, you can put it into whatever leadership framework you want, but put it into the boxes that you need to, but to include it as part of your professional learning. I imagine everyone's kind of in ALP season right now. You have to put your learning plan together. Hey, put in your ALP. Put it on your ALP that I'm participating. I aim to participate in professional discussions with the Decoded podcast for the next year. I'm being silly, but I'm also saying this is an access point. We can be a hub for this. And we'll be here for you. We'll be here for you. We're accessible, right? So I like this. It just, again, I got some kind of like sparks popping off in my brain.
I love that you landed here for a couple of reasons. One of which is I have a connection to make. The second is we're almost done for today. So it's a great way to just kind of wrap it up and move. It does. Okay. So at first it sounds silly, but if you dare to dig deeper, it becomes one of your habits. It becomes one of the things that makes you 1% better each day. So I got a great example. It's a selfish personal example. And thank you, Rochelle. Thank you for sharing what you did about me talking to your leadership class workshop, because when I did that, well, there's a couple, there's a relational piece. My principal asked me if I would help out. I said, yeah, I'd love to. I can reference that time I took to talk to all of you, and I don't care what the other people think about that I'm referencing that. For me, that was a great leadership opportunity. It was a great so somebody thinks I have some leadership skills, so they're like, okay, you can give that to these people, give them a flavor. So there's that. Somebody thought that I was worthy of like a 15-minute presentation. So if they think I'm worthy, then why would I not acknowledge that worth? Why would I not say, when someone says, do you have any leadership experience? I do. Well, tell me about it. Well, recently I was invited to talk to a group of people about leadership in education. Oh, do you have a certificate? No, I don't have a certificate. I'm telling you, I did it. And I'm telling you that I'm using it here to talk about my leadership skills for whatever it is that I'm here talking to you about. They might think that's silly. I don't care. That's me. It's part of my way. Recently, just the other day, so all the reading I'm doing and talking about AI that I'm kind of really digging, I've noticed that a lot of organizations, academic organizations, they're not really they don't want to play with this whole business of AI. They want to just kind of put it aside and say, just don't use it. Or if you do use it, we want you to lean on what we created for this thing that has nothing to do with AI, but we want you to incorporate the AI into it. They're not even building a new process or policy. They just like, let's use the old one and mix and match, which is confusing everybody. So I created a poster about possible uh possible like topics to be aware of and discuss with your students around the use of generative AI. Is it perfect? No. Are there people that are going to agree and disagree with it? Yeah. One of my buddies said to me, "Whoa, why'd you make that? Did like, did somebody at your district ask you to make that?" No. Why did you do that? Well, because there's a lot of talk about it and nobody seems to be landing anywhere. So I thought I'd land somewhere and at least get a conversation going. Oh, you mean you're not getting anything for that? I did get something for that. What did you get? I got my learning. I got to create. I get to lead. Well, for who? For whoever. What do you mean? Like, they wanted me to land on this person, this position of power, asked me to do this, or I did it so that they could use it. No, I don't care if anybody uses it. It makes me better, 1% better every day. And on that day, I got my dopamine hit in a positive way. I was able to flex and feel proud of some of the learning I've done. And oh my God, the reflection is probably the best part, because after I created it and pushed it out, I was like, it's missing a couple of really important points. But I'm not going to go and pull it and redo. It's not perfect. There is no perfection. The perfection is me engaging in that type of process. And people looking at me thinking, why did you do this? Did you get paid? No. Did somebody ask you? No. I'm interested in this, and I see there's a huge hole. And people who I believe are supposed to be leading us through this are not. They're deferring to processes that don't really work well with it. They don't want to build, they want to ignore. You can do whatever you want. I'm creating, I'm leading, I'm building. You don't have to agree with my position. You don't even have to think I'm a leader. What, I don't care. I'm building, I'm leading, and I'm learning. I can put that in my ALP if I want. I can put that on my LinkedIn if I want. Who's going to stop me? Someone will see it and will think, hey, if Roland can do that, I can do that too, because I'm doing all kinds of stuff. The person who's on parental leave, we as a society have neglected the power and the learning and the experience of someone who stays home to raise their children and take care of their children and pretend like it's easy. Bro, well, you're a parent. It's not easy. None of it is easy. And I find myself failing all the time and not transferring skills from some place where I'm quite fluent to the work I do as a dad. And I'm like, why? There's many reasons why. But there are many good things that I'm starting to do that I get from the outside world and bring home with me. And my kids look at me weird and strange, and I'm like, this is my approach at this moment. I'm walking away or whatever. I love where you landed, the micro credentialing. I'm at the point now, nobody needs to credential anything I do because I'm just going to do it. Now, I say that in a very free way. There are still things that I don't do because I'm not ready to step over certain lines personally. But in many ways, I've stepped over all kinds of lines, and this is one of them. I don't care that the superintendent of my school board doesn't care that I created this thing around how educators, people who work with people that they're teaching, some of the things you can do with AI and how to do them. I don't care. They can go do their thing and I'm going to do my thing. It's for me. And I'm sad that it took me 47 years to get here. But on the flip side, I understand that my little brain couldn't have handled any of this at 35. I get that. So maybe I should stop being sad that it took me 47. Because at 35, when I do the Clough test and I think 10 years back, my God, I was a totally different person. And I hope that in 10 years from now, I will be a different person. I'm hoping I will be a better person. That's my hope. And I'm working towards that each day.
Yeah, I'd even say 10 years ago, you had a self-awareness that was useful to you. That's another interesting element of this, right? That's part of the illusion that, to say that you are now so much deeper that's the hindsight 2020, right? And that's a loop. If it's useful, a useful loop, then keep using it. But I would also say that whatever you were going through 10 years ago, you don't get to compare it to now, right? You just don't. It's problematic to do that. It gets embedded in your reflective practice now. If you have something that 10 years ago you would have never done and now you do, and you appreciate it now, then I think in other ways you have to try and figure out why 10 years ago you couldn't. Like that's the thing. We don't just get the dessert at the end. You still have to go back and say, acknowledge and honor and dignify yourself with at that time. And you kind of touched on this. Here's who I was. Here's what my context was. Here's where I was in, like, where was I in survival mode? Where was I in surfing mode? Like, what was more the context? I find more times than not when we do that 10 years ago, I couldn't, we're slamming ourselves unduly. Because it's hard to go back. I mean, go grab your journal and figure out what it was about your life 10 years ago. Watch your podcast from 10 years ago and see what was going on, right? That's the funny thing. 10 years from now, if we ever say 10 years from now, so what do we say? So, okay, mark your calendars, Gary and Rochelle. 2033, 2033, whatever is the Sunday. So 10 years from now, oh my God, we're going to be on season 17. So 2033, when Chids or I says 10, hey, how come you put a link up there. Your link showed up.
My link showed up in the chat, and if I put it on screen, it works.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah,
but
but I can't.
mine didn't. That must be something about responders. That probably is something that's turned on in the thing. Anyways, 10 years from now, 2033, Rochelle, Gary, Chids, we're going to be here having some laughs and some coffee, some Tom Hootens and Blue Jays cups. And if we say at that point, 10 years ago, I did things differently. We actually could call up this podcast and we would be able to say, remember back then we were talking about trying to understand what was going on in Palestine and between Palestine and Israel. Remember we were talking about our understanding of the United Nations and why that's kind of a cool thing for students to be connected with. And then we actually have some artifacts. But I think often we don't have artifacts when we say to ourselves, 10 years ago, I couldn't have done something. So that's it. That's all I want to say on that one. Who's Dorian?
I was trying to say French Dorien.
Oh, okay.
But,
I see it pop up. I'm like, hey, I looked right down to see who's watching. And it's
I probably said it. It's spelled wrong. I'm sure.
That's perfect.
But, I'm responding to Rochelle.
That's a good name. All right.
Okay. Whew. Thanks for your time today. Thanks, Gary and Rochelle, for commenting, checking us out, commenting. Chris has the art. It is a box of tissues with a tissue sticking out. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to use the K word, and then I decided not to. I used the T word, tissues.
Tissue.
Decoded tissues.
We're still in tissue season, bro. Still in tissue season.
Oh, God, yeah. Okay. Well, this was season 7, episode 6, number 271 of the Decoded Podcast. Have a good one, everybody. Chris, stay out of trouble.
Thanks, man. Big thanks to Rochelle and Gary.
Yeah,
big thanks.
100%. Thanks for spending time with us.